there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Nadeina, head of growth at saas.group, serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. And today with me is Robert, founder of Digital Samba, the safest way to embed video conferencing. Amazing. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hannah. So glad to be here.
Well, glad you're here. I mean, we tried to do this for a bit, and finally this is happening. So I have so many questions to ask you, but let's start with your background, like how you got to do what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been quite some time actually since I got into video conferencing. I was a web developer, actually self-taught web developer, because as long as I've been around, you didn't really have computer science courses yet back then. So I got into computers relatively early and started to learn how to program. We then eventually, with two friends of mine, we actually wanted to start a web development agency, but then at some point got enthusiastic about video conferencing in particular. So yeah, I think it was just kind of like a natural inclination to build some tech, and I had some entrepreneurial background as well. I guess, my father is a photographer, self-employed, so I think that just kind of was passed on to me from what I
Okay,
grew up with.
that's pretty cool. I mean, how do you get excited about video conferencing in 2002? Because I was trying to remember if I mean I was 10, but still, like, was Skype even there? Was anything there already? Like,
Yeah, so that's 2002. I was 24 at the time, and yeah, you're right. Skype wasn't even around. Skype was launched in 2003. So we started working on this project in 2002. It's really like a classic living room startup in Barcelona, where me and two friends of mine started to get together and work on Digital Samba. And Skype was incorporated in the same year as we in 2003. So I think, when we got into it, we didn't really understand what it was that we're getting ourselves into. We were just kind of, we found this technology that was called Flash Communication Server, back then still by Macromedia. And we were immediately fascinated by being able to do live video in a web browser. You have to think that the web back then was like super boring. YouTube was kind of just beginning as well. And the web was really very static. And to be able to do something like this, to us, was immediately fascinating. At the same time, we were told by everybody that we're totally crazy. Nobody's ever going to use video conferencing. So again, you have to put all this into context. Like you said, there was no Skype, there was no iPhone, broadband was only just beginning. And maybe, had it not been for the pandemic, video conferencing might never really have become fully mainstream as it did today. This pandemic really pushed a huge level of innovation in the digital realm. So yeah, we were very, very, very early with our video conferencing play. And yeah, we didn't really understand at the time that we're going to be competing with huge companies like Cisco, WebEx, or Skype. And we didn't really understand the massive potential of what it was we were building. We kind of got it, but I don't think we were thinking that strategically. We were young. We didn't have that kind of a mindset. But the reality was we found ourselves in a market is growing in double digits. Yeah. So even though we might not have had the means of some of our larger competitors, we were swimming along on this wave. Yeah. We were just kept going forward, and we eventually found our niche in being able to provide white label video conferencing. So we kind of had to find a way. How do we avoid moving, how do we avoid the larger players in the field? And yeah, I'm going to stop in a second and let you ask your next question. But basically,
sure.
we also really understood quite early that building an API was something that allowed companies to build around our technology, and this created a lot of stickiness, because once developers and companies built something, invested time into being able to build around the Digital Samba technology, it was then much harder for them to move away, or they didn't really want to move away anymore, because it worked for them. Obviously post pandemic, everything changed.
Hmm.
Microsoft Teams entered the market. Zoom suddenly appeared out of nowhere, really. I mean, we obviously knew that it was coming, but I think the world suddenly was confronted with this really awesome video conferencing tool, which prior to that, you didn't really have anything that was able to do this in a business context and worked so well. And with the pandemic having accelerated the adoption of video conferencing at a level that we'll probably never see any technology be adopted as quickly as video conferencing was throughout the pandemic, because it was just the only way to
Yeah.
keep the world going. It has now also changed the way the market is shaped. So video conferencing has become a commodity product. It's not quite the same as email, but it's kind of become a standard strategic tool that everybody has, and the market is owned by Microsoft. And we, without going into any details, Microsoft has a grip on the market, for business tools second to none. So it's almost impossible to compete with them in that regard. So George, my co-founder, and I, we had to sit down and decided to reinvest, reposition. We decided to rebuild everything again from scratch. And rather than offering another off-the-shelf or over-the-counter product, as it's called in some market research papers, we feel that the world has now finally understood the value of video conferencing, and a new opportunity has arisen for integrated video conferencing. So the ability to add video conferencing to your software product. And that's really the mission that we're on right now, to allow developers to add video conferencing to your product in the easiest possible way. And, like I said, we're a little wiser, we're a little older now. We're thinking a little bit more strategic. So we're now no longer in the video conferencing market, but we're now in an emerging market called Video Platform as a Service, or VPaaS. And this is, again, a market that's growing with double digits. That's where we feel at home. I think it perfectly aligns what we get excited about. We have a team which is super specialized in video conferencing. We know APIs, we know white labeling. So, we fit very well. And yeah, let's see. We differentiate from our competitors by being able to give you, one piece that you can plug in to any platform very, very easily. A lot of competitors require you to piece everything together yourself. So let's see what happens. So that's where
Yeah. Yeah. So my question was what was the vision at the beginning and how it was changing with with all the years? But you read my mind and you answered this question already. But I want to, because I know that you had this little detour and you built another company. I think it was Rocket Monkeys, and by the way, every name for the business is super fun. Like I want to know how you come up with those. But what was that? What was Rocket Monkeys? Were you bored? Did you think that maybe you want to do something else? Like, why did this happen?
Yeah, I think it definitely is a bit of that. So when you're running a company for, it's 22 years now for me already, or 23, I'm not quite sure. Of course, there are times of friction, there are times of lulls when the company is going up and down. There's inflection points that you have throughout your life, and I definitely wanted to do something new. I built Rocket Monkeys, which is a fun name for something called unmoderated remote usability testing. So, not quite as snazzy as Rocket Monkeys. And it was a cool idea with the sharing economy mindset, which I built together with my brother. So again, there may be something that we wanted to do together, spend some time. He lives overseas, he lives in the US. So it was a chance for us to work together on a project. And I think we built something really cool. But then once the time came to get into sales and marketing side of things, we just have to be honest about that wasn't our thing anymore. We also kind of got distracted with other things going on in our life. So it eventually just fizzled out, and we tried to find a buyer. But I think we were really pre-revenue or pre any kind of significant revenue. So it was not the right move. And by the way, I also launched a waterproof music player for kite surfers. That was another little pet project of mine, which was a little drop shipping business. So
That's a niche too, to
yeah,
pick.
exactly, niche. It's small companies, bootstrapped. The niches are really the only way to go. I think for me at least, from my point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. No, that's something that we talk a lot about here. Like the more you kind of niche down at the beginning, the easier it is to grow out of it and then, into the bigger market and to really see like what is the problem that you're
And
solving.
maybe one more thing about names, because Digital Samba is
Yes.
obviously also a fun one, and it was, I think, any company owner or anybody who starts a company knows how hard it is to come up with a name, because it's probably the trickiest thing you need to do, right? Right ahead of making your logo, which usually comes next, and you spend tons of time on all of that. And Digital Samba was just something that resonated with us, with the three founders. We all liked music. We were digital. We wanted to have something that's a little less boring than some of the other players out there. So that's what stuck, what resonated with us. But I think, something that I've learned, it's probably one of the most insignificant things when it comes to defining the success of your company, because especially since, ChatGPT, probably one of the silliest names or most difficult names to remember or spell. And it just, spread like wildfire. So I finally, that really finally made me understand that value trumps name 10 out of 10 times. That was pretty incredible how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Still, it's fun to have a fun name. So
Yeah.
kudos. But another, before we go in any deeper into like, product and team and everything, I also wanted to ask you, because we established that, there was a time when you thought maybe you need something else to do to distract yourself and, build something else that could be valuable for that certain period of time. But honestly, 22 years growing this company, how do you stay motivated? How do you deal with the stress, the mental load, everything that's going about it?
So I think it's important to remind yourself that it's a marathon and not a sprint. You want to be in this for a relatively long period of time. At least, again, this is the mindset of a bootstrapped founder, or somebody who's a little bit more seasoned. I think maybe if you have a VC, then it must feel like a sprint, and you feel like you need to achieve and achieve. But I don't think that, personally, I can't imagine that is sustainable for a longer period of time. So I try to surround myself with people who I enjoy working with genuinely. So we hire in a way where we really feel that the team gels. And of course, there are better and worse days, so you need to learn to manage your emotions. The high highs shouldn't be that high, the low lows shouldn't be that low. We all know about that, who are into startups, that it feels like a roller coaster a lot of the time. You need to be ready for that. And I definitely allow myself downtime, and like we talked about, to get creative in different areas as well. So I'm fully focused on Digital Samba's new product introduction right now, and I guess I still love building technology products, but there's times of higher and of lower productivity for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice. Yeah, again, something that comes as a topic here very often. But yeah, I really appreciate what you have to say about it. But you just said that you're working on a new version of the product. What
Mhm.
is it? Tell me more.
Yeah, so this is really, I mentioned this at the beginning in my long monologue. Apologies for that, but we basically, we rebuilt our technology from scratch. So we reinvested. We still run. It's kind of like the whole Apple II and the Mac story, where the Apple II was the cash cow of the company, and our previous product is still our cash cow, but we're now introducing this video conferencing or embedded video conferencing API, and I am hands down convinced that this is the best technology we have ever built. So I'm super proud of what we're achieving. I'm super proud of our amazing team. We are, really, we work in sprints. We do, obviously, like all companies, our own flavor of agile. So we're able to push value to the market every 2 weeks. We're data driven. We have some super loyal customers who stay with us 10 years plus, so there's a lot to be fascinated with, a lot to be proud with. And these things give me energy. These things continue to make me proud and
That's
up in the
great.
morning and go to work. Yeah.
And you're doing everything bootstrapped. So, again, one of the things that I want to ask you is, over all these years, have you developed maybe like, I don't know, a strategy, certain rules, like how you spend, where you spend, like what gets a priority and stuff like that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we keep very tight control over our cash flow. So this is something that's part of our monthly rituals, where we sit down, and me and my co-founder basically, and make sure that our cash flow is positive. If we have something, we just make sure we have a runway. So just like a VC powered startup, we have a runway. We have some money in our bank, which we've built up, and we make sure that if there's negative cash flow months, that we have total control over how long we still have before we run out of money. And then if we need to make adjustments in terms of our marketing spend or in terms of our team, which is obviously the last thing we ever want to do, we have to be very very focused on that. So yeah.
Okay. Could you maybe give an example? Like for what I've heard here, like some people make sure that they never hire anybody unless they know that they have 2 years of runway to pay this person if they actually do that. Do you have any rules like that?
Yeah, we have a level of money in our bank account that we never fall below. So we definitely don't hire if we feel like we're in a negative trend, or feel that we're cash flow negative. It's relatively simple, really. There's not really all that, no mystery to it. Which I can't. We have a forecast to see where we believe that what kind of revenue we think we're going to be turning over. We're extremely conservative in that, so we do not have, if we have a marketing plan or we have, if we make investment, we don't really bank on anything coming in until it's in. And over time you have learned that you count your pennies once they're literally in your bank account. You don't do it the day that the customer says yes. You don't do it the day that you send the invoice. It really has to be in your bank account for you to be able to fully rely on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And well, you mentioned that you have customers that you've had for decades, basically. So I want to know how you make that happen. Like, first of all, how do you find people who you pitch the product to? Because as far as I understand, you were selling to but bigger companies that where it makes sense. And yeah, as also you said, you're competing with giant companies. And yeah, what's your customer acquisition strategy? Like, how do you make sure that your sticky product gets to be sticky at a certain company?
Mhm. Really good question. I wish we would do better at that sometimes, but the reality is that we have a pretty good, we do SEO. We have a good looking website. We make sure that we're very presentable looking outwards to really show us off in the best light that we possibly can. We do invest a lot of time into how we appear to the world. We don't have marketing budgets as such, but we do hope that when companies come our way, that they find what they're looking for. And of course, we're not a fit for everyone, but the ones that, and that's also part of being, niche and being very clear about your value proposition, is that those companies that do want to work with you typically are a good fit. And once they're integrated and once they feel that Digital Samba is working for them, and typically their customer base as well, because we are a technology that's part of their product most of the time, then that's something that they don't want to change. They will only change if they really have to, if they feel that Digital Samba is not performing, and we will do everything to make sure that the customer is happy. So that includes bi-weekly calls if we have to, monthly calls, quarterly calls, whatever the customer wants to have. We make sure that post customer acquisition, we continue to provide service. We have Slack channels with some of our customers in order to be able to allow them to talk to our development team directly. So it's small company tactics where we're able to provide much higher service levels than Zoom or a Microsoft will ever be able to do. I think that's a lot of it, actually, that we're able to provide really, really good customer service.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. We were talking with Jason Cohen about this, and that's what he said. That at the beginning, obviously you're not at the beginning, but you're still a very lean team, and you have a fairly niche market that you're serving. And what he said is that, yeah, especially at the beginning of your journey, that service has to be like customer support, and really making sure you nurture those people and companies that you're working with should be your differentiator if if you're going against much bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, we have very close relationships with the people. It's not companies. You're dealing with individuals on the other side, and often it's companies who are of similar size of us, or larger than us, but also they are typically heads of their departments. Very knowledgeable, very great, very very skilled and intelligent people that I enjoy working with, and I hope they enjoy working with me too.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to just listening to you and what you were describing, how you're working, uh, I feel like you've also been developing the product very closely with your customers. So that means, getting some requests from your customers, and sometimes that's just the kind of the truth of the industry. Sometimes it's just a nice to have, and it's something that not every customer will enjoy or ever need. How do you avoid those situations, or how do you deal with, feature requests that are questionable?
That requires management for sure. Often it's a dialogue that you have with your customer. You try to understand why exactly they need to get a particular feature done. We coach them to be able to understand that there may be a different way of doing things, and then eventually we arrive at a solution that can benefit our entire customer base. So we will never do a branch for a particular customer of our software, because we do have one product and we need to maintain one code base. That would just not be sustainable for us as a company, and the customer understands that too. So it's, again, it's a dialogue where you openly understand their concerns but also make your concerns heard, and then typically we're able to, actually always, we're able to find a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to come back to what you said about your marketing and the fact that you don't have a marketing budget. Tell me more. As a marketer, I'm very curious how you manage that. So, how does it work?
Yeah, so we do. Say we have none is probably a bit of an understatement. We do have SEO strategies. So we do write articles in a particular direction. We make sure that our website is positioned as such. We post on social media and we try to create followings over there. But our experience when we ran pay-per-click campaigns was that we ended up with much larger volumes of traffic and also higher levels of leads, but they were not necessarily good leads, yeah? Which then actually put additional burden on our sales team and other parts of our organization, where we felt that the cost, the input versus output ratio was not really working for us. And I think, we will revisit that at some point. But for now, it's really about SEO, and positioning ourselves to those, and it's the terms that we optimize for are not very high volume. So again, we get very targeted traffic that's very particular to our niche.
Do you
And we
have
are
an
now starting to, sorry, we're also now
Yeah.
looking at much more manual work, where we follow an account-based marketing approach, where essentially we
Mhm.
manually research the companies in particular sectors that we believe we want to go after, and we identify those, and then we do very, very targeted outreach campaigns to those.
Perfect.
But
All
it takes
right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
slow and labor
That's
intensive.
true. But I bet it works for you. And I just wanted to ask if you have any, sales motion to this. Like, do you have a sales team?
Yeah, we're two, including myself.
Okay. That's great. I mean, again, the just go to LinkedIn and everyone's talking about the fact that the founder should be the salesperson, or for at least the first salesperson. So there you go. You're nailing it. Awesome.
Yeah, I think it also, we always talk about this the first, and I don't know it. And I've listened to some of your podcasts. Some different founders have different ambitions. Some feel that they can take the company to a certain level, and then they exit, and they feel that somebody else should take the company over. I think Digital Samba as a company, we just want to make sure that our team is happy, that we can build great technology, that we can make those customers that we have successful.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's also an important thing to kind of understand when you're a founder, like what game are you playing? Because if
Yeah.
you're going after, IPO, and like you said, those big wins, one after another, that's a one mindset, and there is nothing wrong with it. It's just a different kind of setup to what you have, guys.
Yep.
So,
Hmm.
but yeah, interesting. All right, another thing that we definitely have to talk about here, because, well, we agreed that we will. But it was I posted this post about my vacation, and it's been long due. Like, it's been a bit of a rough 6 months before my vacation, and yeah. I completely unplugged. Like, I also started listening to podcasts, and paying attention to like what people do to actually unplug and to actually have a vacation, and not just go to another country and still stay on Slack. But again, a few things worked for me, and then you said, hey, like, this is one of the things that we definitely should discuss, because it's, well, a lost art of vacationing. So yeah, and you also have a remote team. So yeah, how do you make remote team happy? How do you make sure they don't overwork? Because apparently this is a problem. People who work remotely don't work less, they often work more. So yeah, how does it work for Digital Samba and for you personally?
Yep. So this is a really really good question and really important topic, I think, for a lot of people. And there's a lot of chatter, anyways, with what Gen Z wants and that nobody wants to work hard and yada yada yada. I think that's all nonsense. People, of course, I think people do want work-life balance as such, but what that really means is something that is still yet to be defined in many ways, or maybe misunderstood also. So for us, and for me personally, yeah, like, so there was a bunch of questions in there, but I need my downtime, and it's not just about vacations. It's like continuous downtime throughout my day to day, because obviously I have a lot of strenuous things to do, a lot of high profile tasks that I need to take care of, and stress comes and goes. And to be able to deal with that, you need to have downtime as well. So for me, that really means taking breaks. I like to do a lot of sports. I like to do my tennis, my kite surfing. These are kind of my little meditation breaks where I just get away from everything. And then, just as with the real vacation, which, by the way, at Digital Samba, we always tell everybody vacations are holy. Like, you do not mess with somebody else's vacation. You don't mess with mine. You don't mess with anybody's. And you don't reach out to any of your team members unless it's like, absolute emergency, which shouldn't really happen in the first place anyways. Yes. And we're also that, we make sure that we track critical items within our organization and our development all the time. So we don't really have emergencies as such. And if you think you're creating one, then maybe check yourself again before you reach out to somebody. So this is like super important, because when you do take time off, everybody needs this. Yeah, everybody needs to unload. Everybody needs to charge their conscience into their subconscious and just kind of reflect on what's happening, because there's so much more to life than your professional work. And I think a lot of us love work. A lot of us really enjoy, if you're part of a vision, or if you're part of a company that you connect to, then you actually enjoy what you're doing. You're typically a master of the trade that you've learned and that you've chosen. So we like to do that, but at the same time, we also need time to unwind. So for me myself, when I go on vacation, this means I have to switch off my email. I have to log out of it. I need to log out of my Slack. I cannot continue to look at that, because you develop these motor memory, or just like habits, like some people smoke. Yeah, it's, for me and for most of us by now, it's just picking up your phone and checking your mail. And if I do that, then by logging off the email, even if I open my mail app, there's nothing there for me to see. And then I put it away again, and that urge has just suddenly turned into nothing. It hasn't turned into me suddenly spending an hour looking at emails and bringing all of these topics into the front of my mind, which shouldn't be there because I'm on vacation. So yeah, that's when you posted that, I saw that, and that really resonated with me. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about more, and something that, if you want to have a happy team, you should be transmitting to them as well, because yeah, most people don't really get it or think about it enough, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I can see that you're very passionate about this topic. And for me, I always worked at companies where we were a very small team, and it was always you kind of felt like you're required to be there like 24/7, and you have to do what you're doing. And like if you're not picking up the phone, like what if something's happening, right? And when the first time, and I haven't had vacation for like 4 years, I think, before joining saas group. And yeah, and it took the first vacation at saas group, and I was like, okay, I need my phone, I need my laptop, and I need to be on Slack and email and everywhere. And then one of our managers was like, no, why? You're going on vacation, you really don't. And what I did this time, maybe this will be helpful to somebody. You said logging out of your Gmail, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you still know the password. But I have a two-factor authentication, and it's on different. So my Gmail is on one phone. My two-step authenticator is on another phone. So if I travel abroad, I only bring one phone, and it's the one where I don't have Google Authenticator. So that's it. Like there is
So
no
you
way to
literally had
get.
to lock the door and throw away the key to keep
Yes.
yourself out of work,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
Interesting. No,
It
also because there's so much talk, and before the pandemic, we were always told, how can you run a remote team? People are not motivated at work. It's complete nonsense. We care about what we do, and so much to a point that it's actually to a fault where we then actually, it's detrimental to our own health and so on, and then mental well-being. And that's something that we talk about. And I also want to give a lot of credit here to my co-founder George, who's like, his compass is naturally calibrated in a direction of where he makes sure that our team is always happy. So if anybody has any kind of issues at work, if they're not delivering, he will always naturally first check, is that person overloaded? Are they overworked? Is there something going in their personal life? Before we tell, nobody gets told off here. We kind of just try to understand why, what's happening. And usually there's a deeper story to all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm super happy that we had this topic because again, at SaaS Group, it's such a big thing, like the culture and making sure you love what you're doing, you're having fun with your job. Um, that it's always wonderful to have founders here on the podcast who kind of share the vision. But yeah, I think I have just a couple more questions. And the first one is about, well, you talk about this a lot. It's about security and compliance. And again, a bit of a debate, like when to take care of it, how to take care of it, especially if you're like earliest stage. Do you have to somehow deal with it from the beginning, from day one, even before you have clients who demand this? Or, it kicks you in the ass when you're at that stage and you're like, oh, okay, let's think security and compliance. When did you start thinking about it? How did you set it up? How does it work now?
Yeah, it's again, it's a very good question and a tough one to answer. So for us, especially then when I told you we went through this pivot, and it was part of trying to understand what are truly the strengths of Digital Samba. One of those is that we are European and we want to make a product for Europeans. And of course, we have the GDPR here, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is kind of the best international, sorry for the noise, privacy regulation that you have internationally, kind of the model that a lot of other countries are now starting to follow, for better or for worse. Big discussion around this, but I think it just makes you as a company more privacy and privacy conscious, and it has to be, if you want to do it well, it has to be baked into your company culture. So you have to have at least somebody within your organization who is going to be driving this, because otherwise it's not going to work. It's always an unpopular decision to be privacy minded. So you kind of need, in the GDPR, it's called the data protection officer, or we call it like the compliance police or privacy police, which is basically, we have to check everything to make sure that there's somebody in the organization who signs decisions off every time we touch somebody's, or we want to deal with somebody's personally identifiable information. So if you want to do it from the beginning or not, if you can, of course you should. That's the easy answer, the obvious answer. But I think you need to think, what who is your company going to be directed towards? Who are going to be your customers? Are you in Europe? Are you in a different part of the world? Is privacy something that's going to be important when you try to gain customers? For us, it definitely is. We have customers in the telehealth space, and having made these decisions from the beginning now makes everything easy for us. We can just say, okay, HIPAA, no problem. Yeah, we can deal with that, because we deal with as little personally identifiable information as possible anyways, and we have very clear processes of how all of this is done. But a business which might be, I don't know, like something that does drop shipping, or if you have want to do an AI generated children's book business that you sell over Amazon, then it's probably not that big of a concern, and you don't really need to worry about it. So you have to try and reflect, or try to understand where it is you're going to be going in maybe a year or two from now, from the launch, to see whether you want to start it from the beginning. And if you do, then you'd better have somebody within your company that's going to be driving it, because otherwise it's just going to, as soon as it becomes inconvenient, it's just going to get brushed off the table. That's
That makes sense, because any change, is difficult, and if you can brush it off a little bit, then that's what you're going to do. All right. Well, just a couple more questions. The usuals here so far. 22 years. It's fascinating. Every time there is a founder who's been doing something like this. It's really a magical story for me. But over this years, what has been the biggest win and the biggest failure?
I'll start with the biggest failure. So we established, we've been in this market for a really long time. We were one of the first players in this market, yet we aren't Zoom. They entered late, they conquered the market. Really, what they did is absolutely extraordinary. On the positive side, we aren't Blue Jeans, yeah, who are no longer around. So uh, we're still here. And we did it our way. So while Zoom raised, I think, $150 million within 5 years in 4 rounds, they must have had loads of cash burn. It must have been very strenuous. It's just a completely different approach to business, maybe a US approach to business, one that is foreign to me. However, to us, we are the masters of our own destiny. There's a lot to be said about that. We have nobody to answer to except maybe ourselves and our team, and of course our customers. But yeah, I think we're, at least from personality wise, where we want to be. We are exactly where we want to be. So that's the
Okay.
positive.
So it's a two sides of one coin, right? So you're maybe not a Zoom, but you're definitely on a sustainable path. Yeah.
Yep, it's a good summary.
Perfect. All right. So the last question is about a hack. And, it can be anything. It can be, working with the mental load. It can be hiring teams. It can be compliance. Anything that works for you and maybe even works magic.
Yeah. So few things, I guess we talked about some already, but turn off notifications on your phone. Don't let it control your life. Take breaks, travel, read. And a good friend of mine who I hadn't seen for a long time told me that I look more relaxed when I saw him last weekend. And I had to think about what that means. And then I saw something pop up on my Instagram feeds which says, happiness is the lack of desire. And I'm not really a fan of platitudes, but I think that there's a lot of truth to that, especially because I am an entrepreneur. I like to push things forward. So I think try to manage your expectations. Or Larry David has this show called Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I love. So yeah, maybe try to keep it at a certain level where you find your happiness. Because in the end, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful way to finish this. Thank you so much. I think it's a great advice. Somehow, yeah, I think maybe the last couple of years were so turbulent for founders, and that's the audience, and that's the people that I most often talk to, and more and more in the hack section we do have something about happiness and mindfulness and sustainability rather than SEO hacks and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're right. We should probably talk about it a little bit more though. Thank you for sharing yours, and thanks for sharing the story. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Anna. It was really nice talking to you.
Same here, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, and take care.